But first, you are a man of God. So,
Yeah, I hope so.
or trying to be,
Trying
I
to be,
suppose. Tell me, what led you to God?
Well, I'll tell you, I was from a Catholic family, so my parents, good Catholics, went to church, on the weekend and all that. But I wasn't particularly into it until I was about 14. I was a freshman at Fenwick High School outside Chicago. And it was religion class, and it was a sweaty afternoon. I remember coming in from the, playground, and we're all kind of sweaty. And the young Dominican teacher taught us one of Thomas Aquinas' arguments for God's existence, like the argument from causality. And none of the kids in the class, I think, was the least bit interested. For some reason, I still don't know entirely why, it was like a bell going off for me. It fascinated me. And I was 14, but I went to the local library, so it was long before internet and all that. And I was pulling these big tomes off the shelf, trying to figure out this stuff and read St. Thomas Aquinas. And my poor father said, kiddo, maybe you could try something a little bit simpler. But it just lit sort of a fire in my mind, which eventually became a fire in the heart, and led me toward a desire to serve God, not just to know about Him. But it began really as an intellectual fascination, I would say.
Yeah, so let's talk about that intellectual fascination. So what was it about causality? Can you break down what the actual
I think he probably laid out
in terms.
Yeah, probably some version of what's called the argument from contingency, which is things exist, everything around us exists, but doesn't have to exist, doesn't contain within itself the reason for its being. It's contingent upon all kinds of other causes. So you and I are here because of our parents, we're drinking water and we ate. We depend in our existence. Are those things themselves self-explanatory, or are they contingent? Well, they're contingent as well. Our parents were, that water is contingent upon all kinds of factors. Can everything in the universe be like that? And the answer is no, because then you've got an infinite regress whereby you never really explain contingent existence. You have to come finally to some reality whose very nature it is to be. So there's the classic definition of God in Thomas Aquinas. God is that reality in whom essence and existence coincide. To be God is to be to be. So God's very nature is to be, which of course is the biblical self-revelation as well. What's your name? Moses asked God, and the answer comes back, I am who I am. To be God is to be to be. And so that idea, which is hinted at in that argument, is a master idea, I would say, of Catholic theologizing about God. And just maybe to anticipate a bit, I think in debate after debate with the atheists, they don't know what we mean by God, typically. They think by God we mean some big being, some big being in the universe or alongside that universe. That's precisely what God is not. But I'm getting ahead of the game a bit. But that's where it started for me, was a fascination.
I like that. You're pacing me a little bit. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
A fascination with, call it the sufficient explanation for the contingent reality of the world. Has to be something like a non-contingent ground, to use technical language.
So you're 14 years old. You start asking these questions. What's the through line that led you to sitting here? You know what I mean? Like, what's the moment where you said, all right, this isn't just something I'm passionate about, something I care about, something I want to know about, but something that I actually want to devote my life to?
Yes, and I use that language of the fire going from the head to the heart. And that's what happened, I think, is if God is real, and I was convinced that God is real, and God is the supreme good, well, wouldn't I want to give my whole life to God? Wouldn't I want to dedicate my entire life and energy to God? And that became a passion of body, of heart, of every part of my being. By the time I was in college, that had sort of taken over, and I knew that's what I wanted. Now, there were stops and starts along the way. There were moments when I pulled back. I studied philosophy formally in college. So whenever you study philosophy, you read everybody from Socrates to Sartre, and so you read Nietzsche and you read the great atheists and Feuerbach and everybody else.
Sure.
So naturally, when you're 22 or so and you're reading these people, they have a certain impact on you. So I won't deny that, but there was a steady growth of interest, I would say, in the things of God, a passion for God.
Yeah, and then what's it like when you actually want to get into the church? Do you show up at the church and you go,
you
guys?
Mean the priesthood?
Yeah.
Because I was in the church, of course. I was a Catholic.
Right, into the priesthood.
Yeah, in my case, I was at the University of Notre Dame my first year in college. And I did approach the Holy Cross priest there just to say, I'm kind of interested. I was assigned a wonderful guy, he's still alive, Father Tom McNally, who was a spiritual director to me for like a year. But after a year there, I realized I didn't really want religious life, as they call it, like the life in a religious community. So that summer, after my first year at Notre Dame, I went to my parish priest. And I said, you know, I'm thinking about priesthood. So he sent me to the college seminary in Chicago at the time. Began talking to them and then eventually joined that seminary. So that's how you start the process.
Yeah. So backing up to some of the stuff that you led me on quickly. So on some of the atheist stuff, the sense of wonder. What do you do with the sense of wonder in a world where your quest is for the answers? How do you feel about wonder? Do you still wonder?
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm with Aristotle. Philosophy begins in wonder. And see, one of my pet peeves is I think the atheists drop the questions right when they get really interesting. You know, I think when you get to the ultimate questions of why, atheists often say, well, it's just the way it is, or oh, it just came into being from nothing. And I keep saying, no, awaken your sense of wonder. Wonder about the natural world, absolutely. Go all the way. And I just want to say that very clearly. I mean, the Catholic Church, at its best, has always embraced the physical sciences. You know, Georges Lemaitre, the formulator of the Big Bang Theory, is a Catholic priest. Gregor Mendel, the founder of modern genetics, a Catholic priest. So I love that. Wonder all you want about the physical world, but let the wonder continue. Let it deepen to wonder about the very foundations of reality, you know?
Right.
And see, I'm with Aristotle. Philosophy begins in wonder. I love that. I want to know.
Yeah.
But let that passion go all the way, because the mind is on trajectory toward not just particular truths. So you and I learn particular truths in whatever field, you know, physics or philosophy, but the mind is not satisfied with that. I mean, it wants truth itself, finally. It wants, Lonergan said, to know everything about everything. You know, it wants to know the totality of being. We call that in the Catholic Church the beatific vision, meaning knowing the very essence of God. Boom. I want wonder awakened. I don't want wonder shut down at the edges of the physical universe.
Yeah. So do you sense that you know the very essence of God?
No.
Or is this the endless... Can you know it? Can you actually know it?
Not in this life. So I'll do Thomas Aquinas. Thomas says, I can know that God is, but I can't know in this life what God is. I can know what God is not. So think of the divine attributes that we lay out. So God is immutable, right? We say God doesn't change. Okay, he doesn't change. I know that. But what does that mean positively? I don't know. I've never once experienced something that doesn't change. Or I say God is immaterial. He's without matter. Okay, I can tell you, I think, why that's true. What does it mean positively? I don't know. Everything I experience is material. So there's a wonderful agnosticism, if you want, at the heart of Aquinas in Catholic theology. But I want to know, I still want to know, which is a desire that leads me even beyond this life, beyond this world, to a higher world.
Yeah. Do you think there's a certain amount of people, forgetting whether they're atheist or a believer or aren't even sure what they believe, that this stuff doesn't really matter to them in their lives and can still go about a perfectly decent life? That they just, whatever the questions are, they thought about them, maybe they didn't think about them, they put them to bed, and then they're just living some secular, decent life.
Well, yeah, I mean, the medievals said posse sequitur esse, meaning possibility follows from being. So, yeah, in fact, that it does exist, so therefore it's possible. Yeah. I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
But see, I'm with Charles Taylor, the great Catholic philosopher. We have the buffered self in our world today. Modernity has surrounded the self with this buffer zone. I'm buffered from the transcendent. And I live as though that's all there is the world in front of me that I can see and measure and control. I'd say punch holes in the buffered self. Punch holes in that and open yourself to transcendence. What's the line from Leonard Cohen, you know? Is the cracks in your skull let in the light. He got that from G.K. Chesterton, that line. So, I mean, I would encourage people to break through the buffered self.
Yeah.
To
so
a higher
when you say the buffered self, you're talking about just sort of the day-to-day stuff that we're inundated with, right? You're talking about technology and television and the whole thing, or
whatever
more
prevents you from contacting a properly transcendent dimension. That's a buffer that I think is doing damage to the human spirit. You know, see, I'm with Augustine. I think that's the great statement of anthropology: is Lord, you made us for yourself, and therefore the heart is restless until it rests in thee. That's Springsteen's Hungry Heart. That's everything. I got this longing in me that will not be satisfied by anything in this world. And the more you know about the world, the more you know that. The more you experience, the more you know that. That's why, you know, Lewis and those people will say, it's at the best moments of life that I'm least satisfied. you know what I mean, is precisely when I do come to a great knowledge of truth. I do come to a great accomplishment of justice. I do see something truly beautiful. I take it in, and then there's a sense of, okay, there's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's good. That's the heart, soul, if you want, pressing and pushing. It wants more. That's the drive toward the truth itself, the beautiful itself.
Yeah.
I want to recover that because I think it's doing damage to people that we've shut down that desire.
Yeah, so I want to get to some of the societal reasons that we've shut down some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, do you think that people can attain, forgetting the people that aren't asking the questions, but what about the people that actually are on some sort of existential journey or some sort of spiritual journey? Can they attain those very truths without the belief in something they can't prove? Do you think that there could be other ways of attaining the same insights that you're attaining through this route?
Well, and of course, I've been following kind of a philosophical path, with you. That's how I got started. And that's open to anyone, I think, of open mind. Belief or faith in the proper sense is something a little bit different. That's when you learn to trust a word that's come from this reality, that you've sensed, that you want, you have a sense of it. But then the conviction that this reality has spoken through a great religious tradition, and you respond with trust. Now that's faith, and that opens up a whole different side of it.
Right. So
it's like this is helpful to me because getting ready for the interview today, I knew a little bit about you. Went on the internet, Googled you, watched some interviews.
Don't listen to any of that stuff.
No,
whatever it said about it.
But I'm finding out a few things about you that way. And I could talk to people that know you and find out some things.
Sure.
I'd be in control of that process. I'd be rationally investigating. But heck, I'm not going to begin to know you. What's in your heart and your mind. Until that moment, if you and I became friends and way down the pike, at some point, you opened your heart to me. Mm-hmm. And I decided, okay, I'm going to trust this guy. I trust what he's telling me. Faith is a bit like that. You know what I'm saying? Is we can know a lot about God. We can approach God through rational means. We can investigate philosophically and all that. Faith is a matter of trusting a word that's come from God. And that's a whole different game. That comes from a relationship,
Were there moments that you were trying to take the leap of faith, that the ledge moved a little bit?
In which direction, toward me or away from me?
I meant away from you, but if you have a good example of towards you, that's fine too.
Speaking as a Catholic, we like faith and reason. So we're kind of a both-and religion. We don't drive a wedge between them, which some religions do. There's faith, which is great, and then reason's kind of suspect. We like reason, and I've used it, I think, and been encouraged by people in my tradition to use it. But there does come that moment of a leap, if you want to use Kierkegaard's term, and I think that's true. There is a moment of trust in what God is speaking, and I'm not in control of that. And so the ledge can do what it wants in some ways, And now read the great spiritual masters. Why God would behave that way is very interesting. Why God would at sometimes play coy, if you want, where God might withdraw, As you're passionately seeking, God wants to be found, but why would God do that? There's interesting reasons, I think. But I've experienced that, I think, as anyone that's in the life of prayer or the spiritual dimension has experienced.